They invited her into the room, but only to laugh at her. Naomi Brooks stepped into a hall built for power, wealth, and white privilege, carrying nothing but a cleaning tray and years of silent humiliation. She already knew the rules. Keep your head down. Don't take up space. Don't remind them you exist. But that night, one careless joke shattered everything. A billionaire's voice echoed through the hall, turning her into a spectacle, a punchline meant to entertain people who had never once wondered how it feels to be judged before you speak, before you breathe. Her heart was racing. Her hands were shaking. Not because she was weak, but because she had been pushed to the edge. Every laugh cut deeper than words ever could. And then she made a choice that no one in that room expected. If you stay, you'll witness the exact moment dignity strikes back, and a promise that will leave an entire room in the stunned silence. The night the charity gala unfolded at the Hamilton Grand Hall, Chicago's elite arrived dressed like they owned the city. Men in tailored suits spoke in low, confident tones. Women in silk gowns laughed softly, their smiles practiced and sharp. Crystal chandeliers washed the marble atrium in warm light, and a black grand piano waited at center stage like a crown jewel. Polished, expensive, untouchable. Naomi Brooks moved quietly through that world. She wore a navy blue cleaning uniform, sleeves rolled just enough to show forearms marked by years of work. At 34, Naomi had learned how to make herself small in rooms like this, not because she lacked confidence, but because she understood the rules. In spaces built by money and power, especially white money and white power, Black women survived by not being seen. She carried a tray of champagne flutes, eyes lowered, steps measured. Every laugh she passed sounded heavier than it should have. Every glance lingered just a second too long. At the piano sat Grant Holloway, founder and CEO of Holloway Global Properties. White, mid-40s, self-made, according to every magazine that ever profiled him. His cufflinks glinted as his fingers danced over the keys. He wasn't exceptional, but he played with confidence. And in rooms like this, confidence passed for talent. When Grant finished his piece, applause filled the hall. It was loud, obedient, automatic. Grant stood, soaking it in. He smiled the way men smile when they know no one in the room will challenge them. Then he laughed. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, voice booming beneath the dome, "let's have a little fun." The laughter softened into anticipation. Grant turned on the piano bench and scanned the room. His eyes moved past donors, past investors, past people who mattered, and landed on Naomi. She felt it before she saw it. That shift in the air. That instinct every person of color learns early. You're about to be singled out. "You," Grant said, snapping his fingers. "Yeah, you with the tray." The room turned. Every head, every gaze. Naomi froze. Grant smiled wider. "Come here." She hesitated, then stepped forward. Her shoes sounded too loud against the marble. She could feel the stares peeling her apart, her uniform, her skin, her place in the room. As she approached the piano, whispers began to ripple. "Does she even know what that is?" someone murmured. A woman in a red gown, Madeline Cross, laughed softly. "This should be entertaining." Grant leaned back on the bench, crossing his legs. "I've got a proposition," he announced. "If this woman can play the same piece I just did, I'll make her CEO of my company." For half a second, the room was silent. Then it exploded. Laughter, sharp, cruel, unchecked. A man near the front clapped sarcastically. "Guess we're all unemployed tomorrow." Naomi stood there, heat rising in her face, pulse pounding in her ears. She knew this sound, knew this feeling. It wasn't just about class. It never was. It was about who belonged. Madeline Cross took a sip of her wine. Does she even know where middle C is? Grant tapped one piano key with a single finger. The note rang out, sharp and mocking. "Go on," he said. "Don't be shy. This is your moment." Naomi felt something tighten in her chest. She thought of the hundreds of rooms she'd cleaned where no one bothered to learn her name, of the way people spoke louder and slower to her, as if intelligence were tied to skin tone, of the polite smiles that vanished the moment she turned away. She placed the tray down carefully. The metal touched glass with a soft clink that somehow cut through the noise. She lifted her head. For the first time that night, Naomi met Grant Holloway's eyes. There was no fear there, no apology, just a calm that unsettled him. "Are you serious?" she asked. The question wasn't loud, but it carried. Grant blinked, surprised. "Absolutely. You succeed. You get the title. Fair and square." Another wave of laughter followed, but it sounded thinner now. Naomi nodded once. "Then I accept." The room stilled. Someone whispered, "Did she just?" Grant chuckled. "Well, this just got interesting." He stood and gestured toward the bench. "After you." Naomi sat. The leather was cool beneath her hands. The piano loomed in front of her, its keys gleaming like teeth. She rested her palms on her knees, breathing in, breathing out. The whispers returned. Why would she embarrass herself like this? Some people don't know when to stop. Grant leaned in, lowering his voice. "Last chance to walk away." Naomi didn't look at him. "I've been walking away my whole life." She placed her fingers above the keys. The room leaned forward. She closed her eyes and remembered. A small church on the south side, a broken piano, empty pews, long nights when music was the only thing that made the world quiet. Years of learning without teachers, without applause, without permission. Her fingers dropped. The first note landed clean, solid, certain. A second followed, then a third. The laughter died. The melody began to rise, steady, intentional, alive. Naomi's hands moved with memory and emotion intertwined. This wasn't performance. This was survival translated into sound. Grant's smile vanished. Madeline's wine glass trembled in her hand. A man near the back whispered, "That's impossible." Naomi played as if the room didn't exist, as if every insult had become fuel. The music swelled, filling the hall, pressing against the walls that had once boxed her in. For the first time all night, the crowd wasn't watching a spectacle. They were listening, and somewhere between the notes, something cracked. Not the piano, not the music, but the certainty that people like Naomi Brooks were meant to remain invisible. The final chord hung in the air, vibrating with unfinished truth. No one applauded. Not yet. The silence was louder than anything that came before it. Naomi lifted her hands slowly from the keys. She didn't look at the crowd. She looked at Grant Holloway and waited. "Before we continue, what do you think happens next? Do you believe Grant will keep his promise? Yes or no?" "Your answer matters." The silence after the final note didn't feel empty. It felt dangerous. Naomi Brooks remained seated at the piano, her hands resting lightly on her lap, her shoulders straight. She didn't smile. She didn't bow. She didn't look around to collect approval. Years of being unseen had taught her one thing well: never beg for recognition. The room, however, didn't know what to do with her. Grant Holloway was the first to move. Slowly, almost stiffly. He stood up from the edge of the stage, his applause coming late, uneven, hollow. The sound of his hands clapping felt wrong in the grand hall, like a lie spoken too loudly. "Well," he said, forcing a laugh, "that was unexpected." No one joined him. A few people began clapping, tentative at first, then stronger. The applause spread like a wave, but it wasn't the polite applause Grant was used to. It wasn't obedience. It wasn't flattery. It was something closer to relief and shame. Naomi stood. The applause grew louder, but she raised one hand slightly, not to stop it, but to steady herself. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing against her chest. This wasn't victory yet. She knew that. Rooms like this didn't give power away easily, especially not to someone who looked like her. Grant cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "let's remember why we're here. This is a charity gala, not a talent show." The words landed wrong. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Someone near the front spoke up. "You made a promise." Grant's jaw tightened. "I made a joke." Naomi turned toward him. "It didn't sound like a joke," she said calmly. "You said it into a microphone, in front of witnesses." Her voice was steady, but inside her heart was pounding. She knew this moment, the pivot, the moment when confidence from a black woman suddenly became attitude in the eyes of people who had laughed minutes earlier. Grant smiled thinly. "Let's not get dramatic." A man in a gray suit, Richard Coleman, a longtime investor, stood up. "With all due respect, Grant, we all heard you." Madeline Cross scoffed. "Come on, are we really pretending this is serious?" Naomi looked at her then. Really looked. Madeline had been watching her all night, not with curiosity, but with something colder. The kind of gaze that measured worth before deciding it wasn't there. "I didn't ask for this," Naomi said, her voice quiet but clear. "I didn't walk into this room looking for attention. I was invited to clean it." That landed. Several people shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't ask to be singled out," Naomi continued, "but once I wasn't going to shrink. Not tonight." Grant stepped forward. "You're getting carried away." "No," Naomi replied. "You are." The crowd murmured again, this time louder. Evan Miller, the journalist, had been silent until now. He raised his camera slightly. "Mr. Holloway," he said, "are you saying your word means nothing when it's inconvenient?" Grant's eyes flashed. "Put the camera down." Evan didn't. Grant exhaled sharply. "Fine, let's all calm down." But the room had shifted. Something irreversible had cracked open. A woman near the back whispered, "She's right." Another said, "He humiliated her." And then a voice, older, steady, cut through the noise. "This isn't about the title." All eyes turned. It was a black man Naomi hadn't noticed before, dressed simply. No flashy suit, no attempt to blend in. "This is about respect," he continued, "and whether this room actually believes in it." Grant stiffened. "And who are you?" The man smiled slightly. "Someone who knows what it's like to be invited into rooms like this, as long as you don't make anyone uncomfortable." The words hit hard. Naomi felt something shift again, not just around her, but inside her. For the first time that night, she wasn't standing alone. Grant rubbed his temples. "Enough. This has gone far enough." Naomi stepped closer, not aggressively, deliberately. "You asked me to play," she said. "I did. You laughed at me before I touched the keys. You laughed because you thought you knew who I was." Grant opened his mouth, then closed it. "I'm not asking you to make me CEO," Naomi continued. "I'm asking you to admit what you did." The room held its breath. Grant laughed sharply. "This is ridiculous." "Is it?" Richard Coleman asked. "Or is it uncomfortable?" Grant turned on him. "You don't get to lecture me." "No," Richard replied calmly. "But tonight, you don't get to control the story either." Naomi felt the weight of 100 eyes on her again, but this time it was different. This time, the silence wasn't waiting for her to fail. It was waiting for Grant to respond. He straightened his jacket. "You want the truth?" he said. "The truth is, this was supposed to be harmless. A bit of fun." "Harmless to who?" Naomi asked. Grant didn't answer. Madeline scoffed again. "Oh, please, are we really going to turn this into a race thing?" The room went still. Naomi turned to her slowly. "It already was." Madeline rolled her eyes. "Typical." Naomi didn't raise her voice. "You laughed before I played. You laughed because of what I was wearing, because of where I was standing, because of who you assumed I was." She gestured to the uniform. "You didn't see a musician. You saw a black woman who didn't belong." A few people looked away. Grant's face flushed. "That's enough." "No," Naomi said softly. "That's exactly enough." She paused, letting the words settle. "I don't need your company," she continued. "I don't need your approval. But tonight, you don't get to erase what happened just because it makes you uncomfortable." The applause came again, stronger this time, louder, unapologetic. Grant's control was slipping, and everyone could see it. Evan's camera clicked. Grant raised his hands. "All right," he said through clenched teeth. "Let's take a break. We'll discuss this privately." Naomi shook her head. "You made it public." She met his eyes again. "So let's finish it that way." Grant stared at her, stunned. Not because she challenged him, but because she did it without anger, without fear. The room waited, and for the first time in his life, Grant Holloway realized something terrifying. He wasn't the most powerful person in the room anymore. The night wasn't over, not even close. Grant Holloway had built his career on controlling rooms like this one. He controlled tone, timing, outcomes. But now, standing beneath the chandeliers of the Hamilton Grand Hall, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: exposure. The applause faded into a heavy quiet, the kind that didn't offer comfort. Naomi Brooks stood a few feet away from him, calm, composed, her hands folded loosely in front of her. She wasn't triumphant. She wasn't demanding. She was simply present, and that somehow unsettled him more than anger ever could. Grant cleared his throat. "Let's be reasonable," he said, lowering his voice. "This has already gone far beyond what it needed to be." Naomi looked at him steadily. "No," she replied. "It's finally where it needs to be." The crowd didn't murmur this time. They listened. "You humiliated me," Naomi continued. "Not because you knew me, but because you thought you did. You assumed my limits. You assumed my place." She paused, then added quietly, "People do that to Black women every day. Tonight, it just happened to be loud." Grant swallowed. Richard Coleman stepped forward again. "Grant," he said, "you asked for a performance. You got one. You made a promise, and now you're being asked something much smaller than a job title." Grant turned toward him sharply. "And what's that?" "To acknowledge her humanity." That was when Grant realized something else. The room had chosen. He glanced around. Faces he recognized, investors, donors, people whose approval once came easily, were no longer smiling at him. They weren't hostile. They were worse. They were disappointed. Grant exhaled slowly, as if something heavy were pressing against his chest. He straightened his jacket one last time, then let his shoulders drop. "You're right," he said finally. The words sounded foreign even to him. "You're all right." A ripple of surprise moved through the room. "I crossed a line," Grant continued. "I treated you like a joke." He looked directly at Naomi now, not above her, not past her, at her. "And I was wrong." Naomi didn't react. She didn't nod. She didn't smile. She waited. Grant hesitated, then went on. "I can't undo what I said, or how I said it, but I can say this, publicly." He turned slightly, addressing the room. "What happened tonight wasn't entertainment. It was arrogance." The word hung in the air, and I let that arrogance turn into cruelty. Silence followed, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was attentive. Grant faced Naomi again. "I won't insult you by pretending a CEO title fixes that. It doesn't. But I will say this. Your talent, your discipline, your dignity tonight exposed something I needed to see." Naomi studied him for a long moment. Then she spoke. "I don't want your company," she said gently. "I don't want your apology to make you feel better either." Grant flinched. "I want this room," Naomi continued, turning slowly to face the crowd, "to remember how easy it was to laugh, and how hard it suddenly became to look away." A few people lowered their eyes. "I've cleaned rooms like this for years," Naomi said. "I've heard things people think I can't hear. I've seen how quickly respect disappears when you think someone can't fight back." She looked back at Grant. "Tonight I didn't fight back with anger. I fought back by refusing to disappear." The applause began again, but this time Naomi didn't stop it. It wasn't thunderous. It wasn't showy. It was sincere. Grant stepped back, giving her space. Naomi took one last look at the piano. She placed a hand on its polished surface, then turned away from the stage. As she walked toward the exit, people parted for her, not because she demanded it, but because they understood something had changed. Evan Miller lowered his camera. He hadn't captured everything, but he knew he'd caught enough. This wasn't just a story about music. It was about dignity reclaiming its voice. Outside, the night air was cool. Naomi stepped onto the sidewalk, breathing deeply, the city sounds grounding her again. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. She still had bills, still had work, but she also had something she hadn't carried in a long time: peace. Inside the hall, Grant Holloway remained standing, staring at the empty bench where Naomi had sat. For the first time in years, success felt hollow, not because he'd lost control, but because he'd finally seen what that control had cost others. The gala would be remembered, not for the donors, not for the speeches, but for the moment a Black woman refused to be invisible, and a room full of power had no choice but to listen. And sometimes that's where change begins. Now I want to hear from you. How did this story make you feel? Moved, angry, hopeful, or reflective? Do you think moments like this can truly change how people see racial bias? Yes or no? If you enjoyed this story, please comment 111 below. Tell us, what country are you watching from? And if this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today.